What happens when a late-night comedian thinks he can demolish a political figure with prepared jokes and staged humiliation, only to discover she came armed with receipts that would torch his entire career? Stephen Colbert thought he was setting up the perfect takedown of Pam Bondi. What he got instead was a masterclass in how truth can obliterate comedy when the punchline becomes the one getting punched. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The mahogany desk in Pam Bondi's downtown Miami office reflected the late afternoon sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Outside, the bustling energy of Biscayne Boulevard hummed with typical Friday evening traffic, but inside, the atmosphere carried an unusual tension. Pam sat motionless, her sharp blue eyes fixed on the cream-colored envelope that had arrived just minutes earlier via private courier. The envelope bore the distinctive letterhead of CBS Studios, embossed in silver with the unmistakable logo of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. But this wasn't fan mail or a routine interview request. The weight of the paper, the formal presentation, the hand-delivered urgency, everything about it screamed calculated intention. Maria Santos, Pam's communications director, hovered near the doorway with barely concealed anxiety. A seasoned political operative who had navigated countless media storms, Maria possessed an almost supernatural ability to sense trouble brewing in newsrooms across the country. Today, that sixth sense was screaming warnings. The courier said it was marked urgent personal delivery only, Maria said, her voice carrying the measured tone of someone trying to maintain professional calm while internal alarms blared. No advance notice, no scheduling department involvement. Just showed up with your name on it. Pam traced her fingertip along the envelope's edge, feeling the subtle texture of expensive stationery. Stephen Colbert rarely issued personal invitations without multiple layers of network approval and publicity coordination. This deviation from standard protocol suggested something far more deliberate than routine late-night television booking. The silence stretched between them as Pam carefully opened the envelope, extracting a single sheet of letterhead accompanied by what appeared to be a formal invitation. Her eyes scanned the contents once, then again, her expression shifting from curiosity to cold recognition. Well, Maria stepped closer, unable to contain her concern any longer. Pam set the letter down deliberately, her movements controlled and precise. Mr. Colbert cordially invites me to appear on his show next Wednesday. A special segment he's calling Truth or Consequences. Political figures face the music. She paused, allowing the implications to settle. He mentions that recent developments in my career warrant public discussion and clarification. Maria's face darkened immediately. That's not an invitation, Pam. That's a setup. Colbert doesn't do cordial with conservative figures. He does character assassination disguised as comedy. The letter contained additional details that made the true nature of the invitation unmistakable. Colbert had specifically requested that Pam bring documentation related to her recent legal consulting work, particularly contracts involving high-profile corporate clients. The request was phrased as optional, but the underlying message was crystal clear. Come prepared to defend yourself, because you're going to need to. Marcus Rivera, Pam's chief of staff, entered the office carrying a tablet loaded with preliminary research. A former investigative journalist turned political strategist, Marcus possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of media tactics and an uncanny ability to predict how stories would unfold across news cycles. I've been monitoring social media chatter and entertainment news outlets, Marcus announced, his expression grim. There's been unusual activity around Colbert's show this week. Anonymous tips, leaked photos, cryptic tweets from his writing staff. Someone's been feeding them ammunition. Pam leaned back in her leather chair, processing the information with the analytical precision that had made her a formidable prosecutor and attorney general. This wasn't spontaneous late-night comedy. This was orchestrated political theater, designed to humiliate her in front of millions of viewers under the guise of entertainment. "What kind of ammunition?" she asked. Marcus swiped through several screenshots on his tablet. Photos of you entering high-end restaurants with corporate executives. Meeting schedules from your consulting firm that could be taken out of context. Financial documents that, while completely legal, might appear questionable to viewers who don't understand complex business arrangements. Maria crossed her arms, her protective instincts fully activated. It's classic opposition research weaponized. Through comedy. They can't attack you directly through traditional political channels, so they're using Colbert as a proxy. He gets to hide behind the comedian defense while they get to destroy your reputation. The strategy was brilliant in its cynicism. Late night. Television provided the perfect vehicle for political assassination because audiences expected entertainment, not journalism. Facts could be twisted into punchlines. Context could be stripped away for comedic effect, and any response would seem humorless and offensive. Pam stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the Miami skyline as her mind worked through the chess moves being played against her. She had faced hostile prosecutors, aggressive defense attorneys, and ruthless political opponents throughout her career. But this was different. This was warfare disguised as comedy, and the rules of engagement were deliberately unclear. They're expecting me to either decline and look like I'm hiding something, or accept and walk into their prepared ambush, she said quietly. Marcus nodded. Either way, they control the narrative. If you don't go, they spend the entire segment mocking your absence and speculating about what you're afraid to discuss. If you do go, they control the format, the questions, the editing, and the audience reaction. The afternoon light was beginning to fade, casting long shadows across the office as the three strategists contemplated their options. Outside, Miami's evening energy was building toward the weekend, but inside this room, the atmosphere felt more like a war council preparing for battle. Maria's phone buzzed with an incoming text message. She glanced at the screen, and her expression immediately shifted to alarm. "We have a problem." TMZ just posted a story titled, "Pam Bondi's $1 Million Mystery Clients." They're already running with whatever information someone leaked to them. She quickly pulled up the article on her phone, scanning its contents with growing concern. The story contained details about Pam's consulting work that weren't publicly available, suggesting either a security breach or an inside source providing information to entertainment media outlets. "This confirms it," Marcus said grimly. "This isn't about a comedy appearance. This is a coordinated attack using multiple media channels. Colbert's show is just the centerpiece." Pam turned from the window, her expression hardening into the focused intensity that her courtroom adversaries had learned to fear. The game being played against her was sophisticated and well-funded, but it contained a fatal flaw. It assumed she would play defense. "Get me everything," she said quietly. Everything about Colbert's show, his writing staff, his production company, his recent guest bookings, his financial backing, and his political connections. If they want to play investigative journalism disguised as comedy, let's see how funny they find actual investigation. Maria and Marcus exchanged glances, recognizing the shift in Pam's demeanor. They had seen this transformation before, during her most high-stakes prosecutions. The prey was becoming the predator. "You're thinking of accepting the invitation?" Maria asked. Pam smiled for the first time since the envelope had arrived, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. It was the smile of someone who had just realized their opponents had made a crucial miscalculation. "Oh, I'm definitely accepting," she said, "but not for the reasons they expect." The room fell silent as the implications of her decision settled over them. This wasn't going to be a typical damage control operation. This was going to be a counteroffensive, and Pam Bondi was about to remind everyone why you don't challenge A former prosecutor, unless you're absolutely certain your own house is clean. As the Miami sunset painted the office in shades of amber and gold, 3 political professionals began planning what would either be a spectacular vindication or a career-ending disaster. But one thing was certain: Stephen Colbert and his production team had no idea what they had just unleashed. The evening news cycle was already beginning to pick up the TMZ story, with political commentators speculating about Pam's business dealings and questioning her ethical standards. Cable news panels were forming, opinion pieces were being drafted, and social media influencers were preparing their hot takes. But none of them knew that in a quiet office overlooking Biscayne Bay, Pam Bondi was preparing to turn their carefully orchestrated narrative into the biggest media backfire of the decade. Maria closed her laptop and looked directly at her boss. "If we're doing this, we need to be absolutely certain we can deliver. Colbert's audience isn't going to be sympathetic, and one misstep could destroy everything you've built." Pam nodded, understanding the stakes completely. "Then we better make sure there aren't any missteps." The die was cast. In 5 days, one of the most watched late-night television shows in America would become the setting for a confrontation that would redefine the relationship between political figures and entertainment media. Stephen Colbert thought he was booking a victim. He was about to discover he had invited a hurricane. As night fell over Miami, Pam Bondi began the most important preparation of her career. Not for a trial, not for a campaign, but for a battle that would be fought with jokes and journalism, ratings and revelations, comedy and consequences. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was about to learn why you should never ambush someone who spent years ambushing criminals for a living. And America was about to witness what happens when entertainment meets its match in pure, unfiltered truth. The game was on, and Pam Bondi was playing to win. The following Monday morning brought with it the kind of media frenzy that transforms routine news cycles into cultural earthquakes. Pam Bondi's acceptance of Stephen Colbert's invitation had leaked to the press within hours, and by dawn, every major news outlet was dissecting the implications of what they were calling the comedy confrontation of the century. CNN's morning show opened with a panel of experts debating whether Pam was walking into a trap or setting one herself. Fox News ran a segment titled "David vs. Goliath. Conservative legal eagle takes on liberal comedy empire." MSNBC questioned whether late-night television had become too political, while simultaneously planning their own post-show analysis special. But it was social media where the real battle lines were being drawn. #Colbert vs Bondi began trending within hours, with supporters and critics on both sides creating memes, predictions, and elaborate theories about what would unfold Wednesday night. The Late Show's official Twitter account posted cryptic promotional videos featuring Colbert practicing his most devastating questions, while ominous music played in the background. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Inside the gleaming towers of CBS Studios in Manhattan, a very different kind of preparation was underway. Stephen Colbert sat in his private office, surrounded by a team of writers, producers, and researchers who had spent the weekend crafting what they believed would be the most memorable takedown in late-night television history. Jeremy Walsh, the show's head writer and Colbert's closest collaborator, spread a collection of documents across the conference table like a general planning a military campaign. "We've got 3 distinct lines of attack," he announced with barely contained excitement: the consulting contracts, the speaking fees, and the corporate connections. Each one builds on the others until she's completely cornered. Colbert leaned forward, his comedic instincts fully engaged. "What's our strongest material?" Sarah Kim, the show's chief researcher, opened a thick folder filled with financial documents and corporate filings. Her consulting firm received $2 million last year from pharmaceutical companies, while she was simultaneously advocating for deregulation. The optics are terrible, even if the work was completely legal. The room buzzed with anticipation as the writing team began, crafting jokes around the revelation. They had spent months building relationships with sources inside various political and corporate circles, and those investments were finally paying dividends in the form of ammunition against one of conservative politics' most prominent figures. "Here's the beauty of it," Jeremy continued, his voice taking on the tone of someone savoring a particularly elegant strategy. "She can't defend herself without looking defensive, and she can't attack us without looking like she can't take a joke. Either way, we control the narrative." David Chun, the show's executive producer, nodded approvingly from his position near the window overlooking Midtown Manhattan. "The network is fully behind this. They're giving us extended time, promotional support, and complete editorial freedom. This could be the segment that defines late-night television's role in political discourse." What none of them knew was that 3,000 miles away in Miami, their target was conducting her own war room sessions with a level of thoroughness that would have impressed military strategists. Pam Bondi had spent her career dismantling carefully constructed lies, and she recognized the anatomy of a setup when she saw one. Marcus Rivera entered Pam's office, carrying a laptop loaded with intelligence that would have made opposition researchers weep with envy. "We've identified the source of the leaks," he announced, setting the computer down with the satisfaction of someone who had just solved a complex puzzle. Jennifer Morrison, former CBS News producer, currently working as a freelance researcher for various entertainment shows. Pam studied the screen, which displayed a comprehensive dossier on Morrison, including her employment history, financial records, and recent communications with known political operatives. "What's her connection to the Democratic establishment?" 3 degrees of separation from the DNC's media operation," Marcus replied. "She's been feeding negative stories about conservative figures to late-night shows for the past 18 months. The payments are routed through multiple shell companies to avoid detection." Maria Santos looked up from her own research, her expression dark with discovery. "It gets worse. Morrison has been coordinating with at least 4 other researchers, creating a network that specializes in weaponizing entertainment media against political targets. They call themselves the narrative shapers." The revelation transformed their understanding of what they were facing. This wasn't just Stephen Colbert making jokes about a political figure. This was a sophisticated influence operation using comedy as a delivery mechanism for targeted character assassination. "Show me everything," Pam said quietly, her prosecutorial instincts fully activated. Over the next hour, Marcus and Maria unveiled a conspiracy that reached far beyond late-night television. They had uncovered financial connections between major Democratic donors and entertainment industry figures, coordinated messaging campaigns designed to destroy conservative reputations, and a systematic effort to blur the lines between journalism and activism. The evidence was meticulously documented, cross-referenced, and verified through multiple independent sources. Bank records, email communications, meeting schedules, and financial transfers painted a picture of political warfare conducted through entertainment channels. "They made one crucial mistake," Pam observed, studying a particular set of financial documents. "They assumed their targets wouldn't have the resources or sophistication to investigate back. They've been operating in the shadows for so long, they forgot that some of us know how to turn on lights." Maria smiled for the first time in days. "So we're not just going on Colbert's show to defend ourselves?" "No," Pam replied, her voice carrying the cold certainty of someone who had just realized they held all the winning cards. "We're going to expose the entire operation, live on national television, with documentation that will make Watergate look like a parking ticket." As Monday afternoon faded into evening, both camps intensified their preparations for Wednesday's confrontation. But while Colbert's team was crafting jokes and practicing comedic timing, Pam's team was building a case that would reshape the entire landscape of media and politics. Tuesday brought escalating tensions and mounting anticipation. Entertainment Weekly ran a cover story titled "Comedy's Biggest Showdown," while political blogs speculated about whether Pam was committing career suicide or planning something unprecedented. Late-night television ratings were predicted to reach levels not seen since major presidential debates. In Manhattan, Colbert's confidence was reaching new heights. His morning rehearsal session had gone flawlessly, with the writing team delivering punchline after punchline that reduced the studio audience to helpless laughter. The pharmaceutical consulting angle was proving particularly effective, with jokes about prescription politics and lobbying for laughs landing with devastating precision. "She's going to be destroyed," Jeremy predicted during their final strategy meeting. "By the time we're done with her, she'd be a punchline for the next decade." But confidence was running even higher in Miami, where Pam's team had uncovered additional evidence that elevated their case from embarrassing to explosive. Financial records showed that the network of researchers wasn't just targeting conservative politicians, they were also coordinating with foreign entities interested in influencing American political discourse. "This isn't just about comedy anymore," Marcus announced during their Tuesday evening briefing. "We're looking at potential violations of foreign agent registration laws, campaign finance regulations, and possibly conspiracy statutes." Pam reviewed the documents with the methodical precision of someone who had spent years building cases against sophisticated criminal enterprises. The evidence was overwhelming, well documented, and absolutely devastating to everyone involved in the operation. "Are we certain about the foreign connections?" she asked. Maria nodded grimly. "Bank transfers from accounts linked to 3 different countries, all routed through the same network of shell companies that pay the researchers. The pattern is unmistakable." As Tuesday night settled over both coasts, 2 very different final preparations were underway. In Manhattan, Colbert's team was polishing their jokes and practicing their comedic timing, confident that they were about to deliver one of the most memorable late-night segments in television history. In Miami, Pam Bondi was reviewing federal statutes and organizing evidence that would transform a comedy show into a criminal referral. She had spent her career taking down corrupt officials and criminal conspiracies, and she recognized a RICO case when she saw one. Wednesday morning dawned with the entertainment industry buzzing with anticipation for what promised to be a ratings bonanza. Colbert's show had sold additional advertising spots at premium rates. Network executives were planning viewing parties, and social media influencers were positioning themselves to capitalize on whatever viral moments emerged from the confrontation. The Late Show's official social media accounts posted countdown timers and promotional videos featuring Colbert's most devastating political takedowns from previous shows. The message was clear. Pam Bondi was about to join a long list of conservative figures who had been systematically destroyed by the show's razor-sharp political comedy. But as morning turned to afternoon and the hours ticked down toward showtime, neither Colbert nor his team had any idea that their carefully planned ambush was about to become the most spectacular backfire in television history. Pam Bondi was boarding a plane to New York carrying a briefcase full of documents that would end careers, trigger federal investigations, and permanently alter the relationship between entertainment and politics in America. She had accepted Colbert's invitation, but not as a victim. She was coming as a prosecutor, and she had built a case that would leave no survivors. The comedy show was about to become a courtroom, and Stephen Colbert was about to discover what happens when you try to ambush someone who made a career out of sending criminals to prison. The countdown to showtime continued, but the real drama was about to begin when Pam Bondi walked onto that stage, carrying the kind of truth that destroys lies, ends careers, and changes history. America was about to witness the moment when entertainment met its match in pure, unfiltered justice. And Stephen Colbert was about to learn why you should never pick a fight with someone who knows how to finish one. The stage was set, the cameras were ready, And the most consequential late-night television appearance in history was just hours away from changing everything. Neither the audience nor the host had any idea that they were about to witness not a comedy routine, but a reckoning that would echo through the corridors of power for years to come. The final act was about to begin, and Pam Bondi was ready to deliver a performance that would be remembered long after the laughter died down and the real consequences began. The Ed Sullivan Theater buzzed with an electricity that seasoned television veterans had rarely experienced. Outside, crowds of protesters and supporters created a carnival atmosphere that stretched for blocks along Broadway, while inside, network executives, celebrity guests, and political insiders filled every available seat. The anticipation was palpable, crackling through the air like static before a thunderstorm. Stephen Colbert paced behind the stage curtains, his usual pre-show jitters amplified by the magnitude of what he believed was about to unfold. For months, his team had been planning this moment, crafting what they were certain would be the most devastating political takedown in late-night television history. The research was bulletproof, the jokes were surgical, and the timing was perfect. Jeremy Walsh approached with a final briefing sheet, his confidence radiating through every gesture. The pharmaceutical angle is locked and loaded. We've got documents, financial records, and enough material for 15 minutes of sustained attack. She won't know what hit her. In the guest green room, Pam Bondi sat with an otherworldly calm that unnerved the production assistants assigned to manage her pre-show experience. While most guests fidgeted with nerves or rehearsed talking points, Pam simply reviewed a slim leather portfolio with the methodical precision of someone preparing for oral arguments before the Supreme Court. Maria Santos stood nearby, monitoring social media feeds that were exploding with predictions, memes, and increasingly heated political commentary. The hashtag Colbert ambush was trending worldwide, with millions of viewers preparing to watch what they assumed would be a conservative political figure's public execution. 30 minutes to showtime, announced a harried production assistant, his clipboard trembling slightly as he delivered the update. The energy in the building was unlike anything he had experienced in 5 years of working on the show. Across the building, network executives monitored the developing story with a mixture of excitement and concern. Advertising revenue for the episode had exceeded projections by 300%. With brands paying premium rates to associate themselves with what promised to be a historic television moment. But whispers were beginning to circulate about potential legal implications of the content they were about to broadcast. David Chun, the executive producer, reviewed the final segment structure with the confidence of someone who had orchestrated hundreds of successful political takedowns. We start with the pharmaceutical consulting, move to the speaking fees, then finish with the corporate connections. Each segment builds pressure until she's completely cornered with nowhere to go. The show's research team had spent the weekend verifying facts, cross-referencing sources, and preparing backup documentation for every claim they intended to make. They had been meticulous, professional, and absolutely certain that their target had no viable defense against the evidence they had compiled. What they didn't know was that in a quiet corner of the green room, Pam Bondi was making final preparations of her own. The leather portfolio contained more than defensive talking points. It held the results of the most comprehensive investigation into media manipulation and political warfare that had ever been conducted by a private legal team. Marcus Rivera entered the green room carrying a secure phone that had been buzzing with updates from their research operation in Miami. Final confirmation just came through, he whispered to Pam. The federal connections are even deeper than we thought. Justice Department sources confirm they've been monitoring this network for months. Pam nodded without looking up from her documents. Her expression remained serene, but her eyes carried the focused intensity of a prosecutor had just received confirmation that her star witness was ready to testify. As the minutes ticked toward showtime, The energy throughout the building reached fever pitch. In comedy writing rooms across the country, rival shows watched the live streams and social media feeds, knowing they were about to witness either the greatest triumph or most spectacular failure in late-night television history. The audience filing into the theater represented a cross-section of American political discourse, from Hollywood liberals expecting vindication to conservative activists preparing for martyrdom. Media critics, political commentators, and entertainment industry insiders filled the premium seats, their phones ready to capture and disseminate whatever moments emerged from the confrontation. Stephen Colbert's final pre-show meeting with his production team carried the atmosphere of a military briefing before a crucial battle. "Remember, we control the format, the timing, and the narrative flow," he reminded his writers. "She's walking into our house, playing by our rules, with our audience. This is as close to a guaranteed victory as television gets." The show's opening monologue was deliberately crafted to prime the audience for what was coming. Colbert delivered a series of increasingly pointed jokes about political corruption, corporate influence, and the blurred lines between public service and private profit. Each punchline landed with precision, building toward the segment that everyone knew was the evening's main event. When Colbert finally announced his guest, the audience erupted in a mixture of cheers, boos, and nervous laughter that reflected the deep political division surrounding the anticipated confrontation. Cameras captured every reaction, from enthusiastic applause to skeptical frowns, as America prepared to watch what promised to be either validation or devastation for their respective political beliefs. Pam Bondi walked onto the stage with the composed confidence of someone who had faced down organized crime figures, corrupt politicians, and hostile prosecutors throughout her career. She carried herself with an authority that seemed to shift the energy in the room, transforming what had been a comedy show audience into something resembling a courtroom gallery. Colbert's opening remarks were crafted with surgical precision, designed to immediately put his guest on the defensive while maintaining the veneer of comedic entertainment. "So Pam, let's talk about your consulting work. Specifically, your pharmaceutical clients and the interesting coincidence between their payments and your political positions." The attack was delivered with Colbert's trademark blend of humor and hostility, but Pam's response caught him completely off guard. Instead of defending herself or deflecting the accusation, she smiled with genuine warmth and reached into her portfolio. "Stephen, I'm so glad you brought that up," she said, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had just realized their opponent had walked directly into their trap. "Because pharmaceutical consulting is exactly what I came here to discuss." She withdrew a thick folder of documents and placed them deliberately on Colbert's desk, the gesture so confident and purposeful that the audience fell into an unexpected silence. The papers weren't defensive materials or talking points. They were evidence, organized with the methodical precision of a federal prosecution. These documents detail a fascinating conspiracy involving entertainment industry figures, political operatives, and foreign entities working together to manipulate American political discourse through comedy shows. Pam continued her prosecutorial instincts taking complete control of the conversation. Colbert's expression shifted from confident amusement to growing concern as he realized the dynamic in the room had fundamentally changed. This wasn't going according to script. His guest wasn't playing defense. She was going on offense, and she had come prepared for war. "I'm particularly interested in discussing Jennifer Morrison, your research consultant," Pam said, opening the folder to reveal bank records, communication logs, and financial transfers that painted a devastating picture of coordinated political manipulation and her connections to the network of foreign-funded operatives who have been weaponizing late-night television against American political figures. The audience, expecting to witness a comedic takedown, instead found themselves watching what appeared to be the opening statement of a federal prosecution. Cameras captured the moment when entertainment met actual investigative journalism, and the contrast was stark and uncomfortable. Jeremy Walsh, watching from the wings, felt his confidence evaporating as he realized their carefully planned ambush had been reversed. The woman they had expected to destroy was methodically dismantling their entire operation with evidence that appeared to be bulletproof and legally devastating. Colbert attempted to regain control of the narrative by steering the conversation back to his prepared material, but Pam had anticipated this tactic and was ready with a countermove that left him completely speechless. "Stephen, I notice you seem reluctant to discuss your show's research methods," she observed with the tone of a prosecutor, noting a witness's evasive behavior. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable explaining why your production company received payments from shell corporations linked to foreign intelligence services." The accusation landed like a nuclear bomb in the middle of the television studio. The audience gasped audibly, cameras zoomed in on Colbert's shocked expression, and social media exploded with real-time reactions from millions of viewers who were witnessing something unprecedented in television history. What followed was 15 minutes of the most devastating documentary evidence ever presented on live television. Pam methodically revealed financial connections, communication records, and coordination patterns that exposed a massive influence operation designed to manipulate American political discourse through entertainment media. Each revelation was supported by meticulous documentation that had been verified through multiple independent sources. Bank records showed money flowing from foreign accounts through shell corporations to entertainment industry figures. Communication logs revealed coordination between political operatives and comedy show writers. Meeting schedules demonstrated systematic efforts to target conservative political figures through character assassination disguised as humor. The evidence was so comprehensive and so carefully presented that even Colbert's most devoted fans found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew about their favorite late-night host. This wasn't political theater or partisan attack. This was a federal case being presented in real time on national television. David Chun, watching from the control room, realized they were broadcasting what amounted to a criminal referral against their own show. The legal implications were staggering, but it was too late to cut away without appearing to confirm the allegations through censorship. As Pam continued her presentation, the mood in the studio shifted from expectant entertainment to stunned silence. The audience that had come to watch a comedy show found themselves witnessing what appeared to be the exposure of a massive conspiracy involving foreign interference in American media. Colbert's attempts to deflect or minimize the accusations only made the situation worse, as each defensive response provided Pam with additional opportunities to present more evidence. She had clearly anticipated every possible reaction and prepared devastating responses to each attempted escape route. The segment that was supposed to last 12 minutes stretched to nearly 30 as Pam systematically dismantled not just Colbert's credibility, but the entire system of entertainment-based political manipulation that had been operating in plain sight for years. When she finally concluded her presentation, the silence in the studio was deafening. The audience sat in stunned disbelief, unsure whether to applaud, boo, or simply process what they had just witnessed. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was history, and everyone present understood they had just watched the exposure of one of the most sophisticated influence operations in American political history. Social media had exploded during the broadcast with hashtags like Colbert Exposed and media conspiracy trending worldwide within minutes. The video clips were being shared faster than platform algorithms could track, spreading across every social network and messaging app with the viral intensity of genuine scandal. News organizations scrambled to verify Pam's claims, but her documentation was so thorough and well-sourced that independent confirmation came within hours. Federal law enforcement agencies issued statements acknowledging ongoing investigations into foreign influence operations in American media, effectively confirming the core allegations. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Advertising contracts were canceled, network executives demanded explanations, and federal investigators began issuing subpoenas for documents and testimony. What had begun as a comedy show ambush had transformed into a constitutional crisis, involving foreign interference, media manipulation, and the weaponization of entertainment against democratic discourse. Colbert's show went on indefinite hiatus pending investigation. Jeremy Walsh and the research team found themselves targets of federal criminal probes. Network executives discovered they were potential defendants in lawsuits alleging conspiracy, fraud, and violations of foreign agent registration laws. But perhaps the most devastating consequence was the complete collapse of public trust in late-night political comedy. Audiences who had relied on these shows for political information and perspective suddenly questioned whether they had been consuming propaganda disguised as entertainment. Pam Bondi, meanwhile, became an overnight sensation for entirely different reasons than anyone had anticipated. Instead of being destroyed by comedy, she had used the platform to expose one of the most significant political scandals in decades. Her methodical presentation and devastating evidence turned her from a target into a prosecutor, from a victim into a truth-teller who had single-handedly exposed systemic corruption. The legal ramifications continued for months. Federal investigations led to indictments against multiple entertainment industry figures, political operatives, and foreign agents. Congressional hearings examined the extent of foreign influence in American media, with Pam's evidence serving as the foundation for sweeping reforms in broadcast regulation and political transparency. The entertainment industry was forced to confront uncomfortable questions about the blurred lines between political activism and foreign manipulation. Comedy shows implemented new research protocols and disclosure requirements. Networks established independent oversight committees to prevent future incidents of coordinated influence operations. For Stephen Colbert, the consequences were career-ending. The man who had built his reputation on exposing political hypocrisy found himself the subject of federal criminal investigation for participating in the very corruption he had claimed to oppose. His fall from grace was complete and irreversible, a cautionary tale about the dangers of weaponizing entertainment for political purposes. The broader cultural impact was equally profound. American audiences became more skeptical of entertainment, media's political content, demanding transparency and accountability from figures who had previously operated with impunity. The incident sparked a national conversation about the responsibilities of entertainers who chose to engage in political discourse. Pam's performance that night became a masterclass in crisis management and strategic communication, studied in law schools and business programs as an example of how preparation, evidence, and courage could overcome even the most sophisticated attacks. Her transformation from ambush target to federal prosecutor demonstrated the power of truth over manipulation, substance over style, and investigation over innuendo. The video of her presentation was watched hundreds of millions of times across various platforms, becoming one of the most significant moments in American political and media history. The phrase Bondi moment entered the lexicon as shorthand for the complete reversal of a planned attack through superior preparation and devastating evidence. Years later, when media historians analyzed the turning point in American political discourse, they would point to that Wednesday night when a former attorney general walked onto a comedy show stage and delivered a presentation that changed everything. It was the moment when entertainment learned that truth was not a laughing matter, and when political figures discovered that the best defense against character assassination was often a superior offense backed by irrefutable evidence. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert never recovered from that night. But American political discourse, paradoxically, became healthier as entertainment media was forced to adopt higher standards of accuracy and transparency. The conspiracy that was meant to destroy Pam Bondi instead destroyed itself, and in doing so created space for more honest and accountable political communication. In the end, Stephen Colbert had gotten exactly what he had asked for when he invited Pam Bondi to face consequences for her actions. The only problem was that the consequences fell on him instead, delivered with the precision of someone who had spent her career making sure that justice was served, regardless of how uncomfortable the truth might be for those who preferred comfortable. Lies. The comedy show had become a courtroom, the comedian had become the defendant, and the guest had become the prosecutor who delivered a verdict that echoed far beyond the walls of one Manhattan television studio. Truth had triumphed over manipulation, preparation had defeated assumption, and justice had found its way to a stage where it was least expected but most needed. The immediate aftermath of Pam Bondi's devastating revelation sent shockwaves through every corridor of power in Washington, New York, and Hollywood. Within hours of the broadcast ending, emergency meetings were convened in network boardrooms, political war rooms, and federal agencies as the full scope of the exposed conspiracy began to crystallize. At CBS headquarters, a crisis management team assembled in the 32nd floor conference room overlooking Manhattan's twinkling skyline. Network President Victoria Sterling paced behind floor-to-ceiling windows, her reflection ghost-like against the glass as she processed the magnitude of what had just unfolded on her network. The woman who had built her career on managing media scandals now faced the most devastating crisis in television history. How did we miss this? She demanded, her voice cutting through the tense silence that had settled over the room like fog. How did a guest walk onto our stage and present evidence of criminal conspiracy involving our own show? Legal counsel Thomas Brennan shifted uncomfortably in his chair, surrounded by binders full of documents that seemed to grow thicker with each passing hour as federal investigators delivered subpoenas. The research was compartmentalized, different. Teams handled different aspects of the operation. No single person had visibility into the complete picture until Bondi laid it out tonight. The irony was suffocating. The same operational security measures designed to protect the conspiracy had prevented the network from understanding what they were actually broadcasting. Each department had operated in isolation, believing they were simply producing aggressive, political comedy rather than participating in a foreign influence operation. Sarah Chun, the network's head of standards and practices, reviewed transcripts of the broadcast with growing alarm. The documentation she presented appears legitimate. Bank records, communication logs, financial transfers, it's all independently verifiable. Our fact-checking department confirms the core allegations. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away in Los Angeles, the entertainment industry was experiencing its own reckoning. Agency boardrooms buzzed with panicked discussions as talent representatives realized their clients might be implicated in the expanding scandal. Publicists worked overtime crafting defensive statements, while crisis management firms saw their phone lines overwhelmed with desperate calls from entertainment figures seeking protection. At Creative Artists Agency, senior partner Michael Rodriguez convened an emergency meeting with the firm's political entertainment division. The conference room overlooked Century City, but the view seemed ominous rather than inspiring as the implications of the night's events became clear. We need a complete audit of every political booking we facilitated in the past 3 years, Rodriguez announced to his assembled team. Client lists, payment structures, content approval processes, everything. If there are connections to this conspiracy, we need to know before the federal investigators do. The entertainment industry's political activism, once seen as righteous resistance against conservative politics, now appeared potentially compromised by foreign manipulation. Celebrities who had participated in coordinated messaging campaigns found themselves questioning whether their activism had been genuine or manufactured. In Washington, the response was even more dramatic. The Hart Senate office building secure. Briefing rooms filled with intelligence officials, congressional staff, and federal prosecutors as the scope of the foreign influence operation became apparent. The evidence Pam had presented wasn't just embarrassing, It was a roadmap to the most sophisticated information warfare campaign ever conducted against American democratic discourse. Senator Patricia Williams, chair of the Intelligence Committee, reviewed classified briefings that painted an even more disturbing picture than what had been revealed on television. This operation extends far beyond late-night comedy. She informed her colleagues during a closed-door emergency session. We're looking at systematic infiltration of American entertainment media by foreign intelligence services. The classified evidence showed coordination between multiple foreign governments, sophisticated money laundering operations, and influence campaigns that had been operating undetected for years. The late-night comedy shows were just the most visible component of a much larger and more dangerous conspiracy. FBI counterintelligence teams worked through the night, cross-referencing Pam's evidence with their own ongoing investigations. What they discovered confirmed their worst fears. The entertainment industry had been systematically compromised, with foreign agents using comedy shows, social media influencers, and celebrity activism to shape American political discourse. Special Agent Diana Foster, head of the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force, briefed senior Justice Department officials on the expanding investigation. The banking records alone justify RICO charges against multiple defendants. But the foreign intelligence connections elevate this to national security implications. Back in New York, Stephen Colbert sat in his apartment overlooking Central Park, his career and reputation in ruins as federal investigators seized records from his production company. The man who had built his identity around exposing political corruption now found himself at the center of the most significant political scandal in decades. His agent, Rebecca Martinez, delivered the devastating news that no network would touch him until the federal investigation concluded. The legal exposure is too significant, she explained over a secure phone call. Every major advertiser has pulled out. The show is effectively canceled indefinitely. The comedy writers who had crafted the attack against Pam discovered they were now subjects of federal criminal investigation. Jeremy Walsh, once the toast of political comedy writing, found his bank accounts frozen and his communications under surveillance as investigators traced the network of foreign-funded research that had provided material for countless political segments. Meanwhile, at universities across the country, professors of media studies, political science, and communications scrambled to understand the implications of what had been revealed. The incident wasn't just a political scandal, it was a fundamental challenge to assumptions about media, independence, and the role of entertainment in democratic discourse. Dr. Amanda Richardson, a media ethics professor at Columbia University, convened emergency seminars to discuss the broader implications. We're witnessing the exposure of information warfare disguised as entertainment, she explained to packed lecture halls. This forces us to completely reconsider how we analyze media content and its potential manipulation by foreign actors. The academic response was swift and comprehensive. Research centers dedicated millions of dollars to studying foreign influence in American media. Journalism schools revised their curricula to include training on identifying and exposing coordinated influence operations. Media literacy became a core requirement at universities nationwide. International reactions were equally dramatic. Allied intelligence services began investigating their own entertainment industries for similar influence operations. The Bondi model of using entertainment media for foreign manipulation was identified in multiple countries, leading to a global reassessment of media security and foreign influence detection. The European Union launched its own investigation into foreign influence in member nations' entertainment industries. British intelligence services discovered similar operations, targeting political comedy shows in the UK. Canadian authorities identified coordinated campaigns designed to influence their political discourse through entertainment media. Foreign adversaries found their carefully constructed influence networks exposed and dismantled. Years of investment in building relationships with entertainment industry figures evaporated overnight as the conspiracy's exposure triggered comprehensive counterintelligence operations. The Chinese government, identified as one of the primary foreign actors in the conspiracy, faced significant diplomatic consequences. Trade negotiations stalled as American officials demanded accountability for the influence operations. Cultural exchange programs were suspended pending investigation of their potential use as cover for intelligence activities. Russian officials, also implicated in the conspiracy, watched as their entertainment industry assets were systematically exposed and neutralized. The sophisticated influence operation they had built over years crumbled within weeks as American investigators traced financial connections and communication networks. Social media platforms faced intense scrutiny as investigators examined how the conspiracy had used digital channels to amplify its messaging. Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube implemented new policies requiring disclosure of foreign funding for political content. Algorithm changes prioritized transparency and authenticity over engagement and controversy. The technology industry's response was comprehensive and immediate. Artificial intelligence systems were deployed to detect coordinated influence campaigns. Financial tracking systems identified suspicious payment patterns. Communication analysis revealed network structures that had previously operated undetected. Silicon Valley executives found themselves testifying before Congress about their platforms' vulnerabilities to foreign manipulation. The hearings revealed systemic weaknesses in content moderation, financial transparency, and foreign actor detection that had allowed the conspiracy to operate with impunity. Mark Thompson, CEO of a major social media platform, acknowledged the security failures during congressional testimony. "We underestimated the sophistication of foreign influence operations. The entertainment industry provided perfect cover for activities we failed to detect through traditional monitoring systems." The entertainment industry's reckoning extended beyond individual careers to fundamental questions about artistic independence and political engagement. Actors, writers, directors, and producers found themselves questioning whether their political activities had been genuine or manipulated by foreign actors. Hollywood's progressive political activism, once seen as courageous resistance, now appeared potentially compromised by foreign manipulation. Charity events, award show speeches, and political endorsements were re-examined for signs of coordinated influence campaigns. The Screen Actors Guild convened emergency meetings to address member concerns about foreign manipulation of their political activities. "We must ensure that our advocacy is authentic and independent," announced Union President Maria Santos during a press conference. "The exposure of this conspiracy forces us to implement new safeguards against foreign influence." Directors Guild of America established new protocols requiring disclosure of foreign funding for any project with political content. Writers Guild of America implemented background checks for researchers and consultants involved in political programming. Producers Guild of America created oversight committees to monitor foreign financial influence in entertainment production. The broader cultural impact extended far beyond entertainment into American political discourse itself. Citizens who had relied on late-night comedy shows for political information found themselves questioning the authenticity of content they had consumed for years. Political satirists across the industry faced credibility crises as audiences questioned whether their material was genuine commentary or foreign-influenced propaganda. Comedy clubs implemented new policies requiring disclosure of research sources and funding mechanisms. The conspiracy's exposure triggered a national conversation about media literacy and critical thinking. Educational institutions incorporated lessons about identifying foreign influence operations into their curricula. Public libraries hosted workshops on analyzing media content for signs of manipulation. Citizen journalism emerged as a powerful force for verification and accountability. Independent researchers began investigating other potential influence operations, using Pam's evidence as a template for identifying suspicious patterns in media content and funding. The legal ramifications continued expanding as federal prosecutors built cases against multiple defendants. Grand juries were convened to examine evidence of conspiracy, foreign agent violations, and money laundering. The cases promised to be among the most significant prosecutions of foreign influence operations in American history. Defense attorneys struggled to develop strategies for clients facing overwhelming evidence of participation in the conspiracy. Plea negotiations began almost immediately as defendants realized the strength of the government's case and the severity of potential sentences. International law enforcement cooperation reached unprecedented levels as multiple countries worked together to dismantle the global influence network. Extradition requests were filed against foreign nationals involved in the conspiracy. Asset forfeiture actions targeted financial resources used to fund the operations. The financial sector implemented new monitoring systems to detect suspicious international transfers related to media and political activities. Banks established specialized units to identify potential foreign influence funding. Cryptocurrency exchanges enhanced their compliance systems to prevent use of digital currencies for influence operations. Regulatory agencies across multiple industries revised their oversight procedures to address foreign influence vulnerabilities. The Federal Communications Commission updated broadcasting regulations to require disclosure of foreign funding. The Securities and Exchange Commission enhanced monitoring of entertainment industry financial reporting. Intelligence agencies received expanded authorities to investigate foreign influence in American media. New task forces were established specifically to monitor entertainment industry foreign influence. International intelligence sharing agreements were strengthened to address global influence operations. The academic community continued analyzing the conspiracy's implications for democratic discourse and media independence. Research papers examining the entertainment influence model became foundational texts for understanding modern information warfare. Case studies of the conspiracy's exposure became required reading in intelligence and national security programs. Policy recommendations emerged from multiple think tanks and academic institutions. Proposals included enhanced disclosure requirements for foreign funding, mandatory media literacy education, and improved detection systems for coordinated influence campaigns. The conspiracy's exposure fundamentally altered the relationship between entertainment and politics in America. The era of unchecked political activism by entertainment figures ended as new transparency requirements and security measures were implemented across the industry. Late-night television comedy underwent comprehensive reform as networks implemented new research protocols, disclosure requirements, and oversight mechanisms. The freewheeling political commentary that had characterized the genre was replaced by more cautious and transparent approaches to political content. Political figures across the spectrum reassessed their relationships with entertainment media. Conservative politicians gained new credibility as victims of systematic manipulation, while liberal figures faced scrutiny about their potential involvement in foreign influence operations. The conspiracy's exposure vindicated Pam Bondi's decision to accept Colbert's invitation despite the obvious risks. Her methodical investigation and devastating presentation became a model for how public figures should respond to coordinated attacks. Her transformation from target to prosecutor demonstrated the power of preparation, evidence, and courage in confronting sophisticated influence operations. Media training programs began incorporating lessons from Pam's performance. Crisis management firms studied her strategic approach. Law schools analyzed her methodical presentation of evidence as an example of effective advocacy under pressure. The broader implications for American democracy were profound and lasting. The conspiracy's exposure led to strengthened defenses against foreign influence, enhanced media literacy among citizens, and increased transparency in entertainment industry political activities. Foreign adversaries found their influence operations significantly degraded as American institutions implemented comprehensive countermeasures. The sophisticated networks they had built over years were dismantled, and their ability to shape American political discourse through entertainment media was permanently compromised. The Bondi moment became a turning point in American media history, marking the end of an era of unchecked foreign influence and the beginning of a new period of transparency, accountability, and security in entertainment industry political engagement. Years later, when historians examined the factors that preserved American democratic discourse from foreign manipulation, they would point to that Wednesday night when a former attorney general walked onto a comedy show stage and delivered a presentation that changed everything. It was the moment when entertainment learned that truth was not a laughing matter, and when foreign influence operations discovered that American resilience and determination could overcome even the most sophisticated attacks on democratic institutions. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.